Chris, Lee and William Drummond of Southeastern14.com here. We're talking some SEC baseball. William, long weekend of baseball. Missouri was still playing today. Last I checked, that game was tied with Nichols State in a 4-game series. But as far as the 3-gamers went, I think the league won, 7 of them? Maybe didn't get the marquee series. You had offensive craziness at LSU. You had a lot of stuff going on. What stood out to you?
Yeah, a lot of fun baseball. Just kind of good to be back. If you would have asked me Thursday what I thought my answer would be, it would have been either State or Vandy. Mm-hmm. But after the weekend unfolded, it's typically got some surprises in there for us. I think it's got to be Auburn. I thought that was kind of the team of the weekend. State and Vanderbilt both kind of had their chance to be that marquee team, and they both lose series at home to ranked teams. Auburn goes to Globe Life. I think they're the first SEC team to get started on Friday. They lose 3-0 to Oklahoma. But after that, they bounce back with a big win against Texas Tech. And then they kind of boat race Kansas State there on Sunday to put an exclamation point on it. But that was a really good weekend for them. I think they, against some strong competition, they kind of answered some questions that we had. And the transfers looked really, really good for them. And I think that's got to be the story and kind of the number one thing I came out impressed with.
Yeah, within that to me was the pitching, right? Because Auburn's ERA a year ago was 5 1/4. They had some talented guys back, but not guys who'd put it together. And I know they're playing in a big league ballpark, and that helps. But what they entered the weekend with a 1-something ERA, that was not something I think anyone saw coming because their pitching's been a question mark for a couple years now.
Yeah, and under Butch Thompson, I mean, that's a guy you kind of trust with pitching, but just the league they're in, the division, it's tough. You know, you're not always going to have the arms to compete day in, day out. But you know, there's some unproven guys that really stepped up, and I thought did really well for them. One of the things I was kind of most interested is the Notre Dame transfer Tommy Sheehan. He was their Friday guy. He only went 1 inning due to a pitch count. He's coming off Tommy John. But the fact that they had him in the rotation from weekend 1, I think while you didn't get to see a ton of him this week, I think that's a really encouraging sign. And then after that, the whole staff, it seemed pitched really, really well game after game against some good competition.
The 2 marquee series were Vanderbilt, Oklahoma State. I was in Nashville for those. You watched a lot of Mississippi State and Long Beach State. Disappointing outcomes for the SEC in both those. Let's start with State. 1 hit on Friday. They give up a bunch of runs Saturday, and then they come back and kind of mash the Dirtbags on Sunday. But what was your overall impression of Mississippi State this weekend?
Yeah, like you mentioned, that's kind of the risk you run with coming out of the gate with a ranked opponent. There's not much time to knock that rust off. If you look at the stats, I think State's last in the SEC in ERA right now. But I think that's really just kind of what you saw on Saturday, kind of balloon that ERA up. Sims looked really good. I mean,
yes, he did.
About as positive as you can be.
Can I interrupt you? Did you see the final pitch count on him? It was like he only threw like 12 or 13 balls. That was crazy.
Yeah, I think he goes 7 with 13 strikeouts, no walks, and 81 pitches. That's kind of been one of the things. State's had some really good Friday guys, but they haven't always been the most efficient. They're kind of some high strikeout total guys that typically get that pitch count up there. So the fact that he's able to run up 13 strikeouts on 81 pitches was pretty good. But Long Beach State's Friday guy was really good. He gives up 1 hit the entire game, and that's kind of part of it, especially early in the season. Saturday is kind of when things kind of got out of hand. Casey Hunt's a guy they really like. Didn't look great. I think he gave up 5 runs in those first 3 innings that he was there. And then there was a bright spot there with Preston Johnson. He came in and kind of shut the door on a couple of things. I think he went 4 and gave up 1 hit. It happened to be a solo homer. But then other than him, everybody they put on the mound Saturday got kind of roughed up. And then Sunday they kind of show up and the bats or wake up and they kind of cruise to that one. But not the start they're looking for. But like I said, that's kind of part of it when you play, really good teams. And I think Long Beach beat State. I think it was in 2019. State went out there, and then they turn around and do it again. So that's a really good program. And of course, anytime you get some of those smaller schools, the SEC series is the marquee series. They come in ready. And Long Beach is not a team that's going to be intimidated by much of anything. They're a really good program. So, I'm not too terribly shocked that happened. That is a good team. But I know that's kind of a sour taste for State to start the year.
I guess the bright spot looked like some of their new faces in the lineup maybe came around a little bit on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some of the seasoned guys. I know James, Hancock, Tanner all had 2 hits on Sunday. But some of the big blows came from new faces. So as disappointing as that weekend was, there's still some things you can kind of take out of that and feel pretty good about. And now it's just kind of how do they do the rest of the non-conference, because obviously you don't want to – they got a series with Tulane coming up in a couple of weeks at Tulane. So kind of puts you behind the 8 ball there. You don't really want to lose 2 non-conference series. So be interested to see how things shake out there.
Well, I saw a lot of Vanderbilt and Oklahoma State. In fact, I saw every pitch of that. I was in the ballpark for that one. I thought for Vandy, the starting pitching and the pitching on the whole was better than I thought it was going to be. I talked to Tim Corbin. He had said some things. He mentioned the word uncertain many times. He never said we're bad. He just said uncertain, and they weren't bad. Chris McElvain was a guy that started for them, was a surprise Friday guy. He pitched really well, struck out, I believe, 10 in 4 innings. They went Nick Maldonado, their closer from last year, on Saturday. He didn't pitch very well. And then they went Carter Holton on Sunday, their freshman phenom, who was electric out of the gate. Then had a couple walks. Corbin said he got sped up, and then he looked pretty mortal, gave up a big hit or 2. And the line wasn't good, but I'll tell you what, that kid is going to be special for them, and sooner rather than later. Their bullpen was really good except for Thomas Schultz. Vandy's problem was hitting, and it happened to them all weekend. They'd hit really well 1-3, and they hit pretty well 7-9. But 4, 5, and 6, Dominic Keegan would look bad and good in the same game, and then they got nothing from Carter Young and Parker Nolan. Yeah, I think Young is still working his way back from the shoulder injury last year, but Vandy was just – the offense wasn't great, but it was one swing away from taking that series in what was a really evenly matched series against, frankly, an outstanding Oklahoma State team.
Yeah, I came away with that really impressed with Oklahoma State. Like you mentioned, that was kind of the premier series going into the weekend across all of college baseball. Delivered with 3 close games. And it's early in the year, so you see some guys like you mentioned, Maldonado making his move to the rotation, gives up 4 runs in 4 innings, so you don't feel great there. But then you take a step back and okay, it's against a top 10 team in his first start. Those guys are human. And then I like Carter Holton from what I saw from him. He did kind of run into some trouble there, but like you mentioned, you saw flashes of just what he can do. So if you can come out and kind of roll with the punches from game 1 against the top 10 team, I think he's got a chance to be really special for them.
I said this in the written thing I did on Southeastern 14. Tell me if you disagree. I think you can make a case, and I'm not saying they had the best series win, right? These are different things. But I thought the way they played all the way around, Tennessee might have had the best weekend of anybody. Georgia Southern is not a slouch. It's a top-level team in the Sun Belt, which is a decent league, not a great league, but an okay league. And with Tennessee down 2 starting pitchers, William, and second, third, short, they had all-star level guys there a year ago. They're all gone. They're replacing a bunch of those guys. I thought with the hand Tennessee was dealt and the way it played, to me, that was an out-of-this-world performance for the Vols.
Yeah, I think that went about as well as you could expect or could have hoped for a Tennessee fan. Like you mentioned, Georgia Southern is a great program. They've got a lot of new faces for Tennessee, so you're not 100% sure. It was awesome to see their crowd turn out like it did. I think that was the largest opening day crowd they had. The freshman Burns looks really, really good. 5 innings, no runs. Then Saturday, Dolander, he allowed a couple of 3 earned runs, but 11 strikeouts, no walks. I thought that was really surprising,
which had to be weird.
Yeah, I had not put that together until I was sitting there watching it Saturday, and I was like, the light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, that's a cool little nugget. But yeah, I'm sure there's a little extra emotion, a little extra jitters there, but I thought they pitched really well. 3 earned runs on the whole weekend. That's a pretty loud stat. And then, Saturday or Sunday rather, the offense kind of got after it and they put that one out of reach pretty quickly.
Other good performances. This is not one people are probably talking about, but I think Kentucky going to Jacksonville State, which again is a team that could win the OVC, made a regional a year ago, and Kentucky's playing on the road, breaking in new faces like everybody else. I thought that was a really solid win for the Wildcats.
Agreed. Yeah, they're Kentucky, still pretty chilly up there. They're very often start out on the road, and that's not the easiest thing to do. So for them to go out and it's tough sledding in the SEC, so every win you get matters. 3-0 is a lot better than 2-1. So to see them kind of go down there and take care of business, I thought was really encouraging.
Yeah, and I think Ryan Ritter, who was a kid who got a lot of offseason attention. The line a year ago wasn't that good at UK, but I thought he had a pretty good series for them. New had a good series. I mean, they did a little bit of everything. I think the disappointing part for them is Cole Stepp, who we put on our third team All-SEC, wasn't very good, but I think the rest of their pitching was okay.
Yeah, and you can almost take away something a little encouraging out of that is, you go 3-0 and you're in good shape and you look good without Stepp having his best day. So when things do start clicking there, that's got to make you feel a little bit better. And like you said, Ritter, I know that's a guy a lot of people like. The coaches voted him. I think it was second team. So they clearly respect him. I think that's a guy you might see take a big jump. Like you mentioned, his stat line last year might not be indicative of how good he is.
How are we feeling about Arkansas?
Probably not the weekend they would have wanted. You go 2-1, a little closer than you would have liked, but I thought they pitched really well. The offense didn't look like as great as it did last year and what you're kind of expecting. But I think that's okay. That offense is going to come around. I think you'd rather see the offense start off a little slow and the pitching look good, as opposed to the opposite, because that offense is going to hit. But for the starting rotation to be without Pallette and do that good, I think that was an encouraging sign. The freshman Hagan Smith was good in his debut. Wiggins was pretty good. He went 5 innings, only gave up 1 run Sunday in what was a pretty tight rubber match. So I thought all in all, yeah, it's not it's not what you dreamed up, but it's at the end of the day, you'll take that on opening weekend, and I would expect that team to gradually improve week by week.
Yeah, I think they got out of Sunday just using 2 pitchers and giving up 1 run. I mean that was that's kind of a good thing. Like I thought, if there's a way to end the weekend, it's to be efficient with your guys you had to use the last 2 days. You don't see that a lot. I mean, I think we all think this team's going to hit. They didn't really bring the bats all weekend. I think they hit 246. Battles hit a home run. I think they only had a couple of those, which is rare for Arkansas, right? Because it seemed like every time you turn on the TV, they were hitting 5 home runs in a game. But I think that's the thing. Like if you wanted to see it go well on one side, if you're Arkansas, that's probably the one you pick because you figure the bats are going to hit.
Definitely, yeah. I think Robert Moore had 2 extra base hits and 3 RBIs on Sunday. So that's a guy is going to produce. That lineup's going to produce. So I think, going in, you were a little bit more concerned about what the pitching was going to look like. So the fact that looked pretty solid, I think you're happy with that. You'll take that out of it.
I feel like we should have mentioned this earlier in the show, but I think everybody was buzzing about the 51 runs LSU scored this weekend. I know Maine is not Mississippi State, but at the same time, you score that against any D1 team. That's pretty impressive. And, of course, when you're home, and you got a huge lead, you don't bat in the ninth. So they're scoring over 2 runs an inning, and everybody down there hit all weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to put it in perspective. It is Maine. But like you said, there's been a lot of teams that weren't great that teams have played in, early in the year that don't put up 51 runs. That was loud. It was all weekend long, all 3 games, start to finish. I know Barry got 2 home runs, and it just seems like you look through that box score, and there's not a guy that didn't do some damage along the way. And one of the things I found pretty interesting is a lot of times you'll see, all the signs point to how good LSU is going to be offensively. So a lot of times you see all those All-Americans, all that stuff. They kind of press early in the year, and everybody's trying to score 8 runs in the first inning. And LSU just came out and out of the gate just bashed. And arguably, I think maybe similar to Arkansas, what's more encouraging out of that is how good Blake Money looked on Friday night.
Yeah.
He was really, really good. If they can get that version of him all year, that's a big plus.
I think he had the longest start of anybody in the league over the weekend, didn't he? He went 7 innings, which I don't think anybody else went over. I want to say Barco went like 6 1/3 or something like that, but
I think
him and Sims
start. I think him and Sims both went 7. Sims gave up the one run on the home run. I think Money only gave up 2 hits, no runs, 10 Ks, no walks. I mean, that's about as good as you could ask for night one.
Well, and the thing on the runs too, I mean, my goodness, I think it was Saturday they won 20-1, and I had 20 after 5 innings, didn't they? I mean, so they're taking guys out of the lineup and keeping it down, and
I think that was the Sunday game, but yeah,
who knows how many they could have scored?
Yeah, I think they put up 11 in the second on Sunday, and it was just like, goodness, they just keep hitting. I'll be interested to see them against some better competition, because obviously, like I said, Maine probably hasn't seen an outside baseball field very much this winter. But I think the LSU gets La Tech this weekend or this midweek. That's always a good little chippy one. So I'll be interested to see how they do against La Tech. But that went about as good as you could have expected, even if you're the most optimistic LSU fan. Kind of the perfect start for the Jay Johnson era.
I thought going into the season, the best lineup in the league was either them or Ole Miss. I thought LSU's top 4 or 5 were better. Ole Miss might be a little deeper. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. But I don't know what you make of Ole Miss playing Charleston Southern, but I ended the week with them number 1 on my power rankings. I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but seemed like they hit the ball all weekend. The pitching was good enough. I don't know what you take away from what they did, but have at it if you've got a takeaway here.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I feel like it's kind of the hardest to take away. They did exactly what you're supposed to do. They just kind of bludgeoned an inferior team. And, Elko hits 2 home runs. I think that guy's just going to continue to hit home runs as long as people throw to him. Diamond looked pretty good for them. 5 innings, 2 earned, 8 Ks. He doesn't have to be lights out for them to win a lot of games this year, but it's encouraging to see him.
If they get 5 or 6 innings out of Diamond, giving up 2 or 3 runs, they're going to win a lot of games when he pitches. Yeah,
they are, because, I mean, that, like you mentioned, LSU is kind of what everybody talks about because they've got the star power with Barry transferring in and Cruz. But I think you might be right. I think Ole Miss might be a little bit deeper. That lineup is just scary good, and there's not a lot to really talk about just because they just kind of did what you're supposed to. They went out and they hit and they put it out of reach pretty early, and had 3 comfortable wins, which is kind of all you want as a fan against a lesser team on opening weekend.
Well, there was one team that it wasn't out of reach in games. In fact, we had written, we being me, had written a wrap up for Sunday and forgot to check the final. South Carolina's down 7-1 in the ninth, and I'm thinking they're dead and buried. Lo and behold, I write my piece thinking they lost the series. They hadn't, had to issue a retraction. So we're sorry about that. That was a little bit, more than a little embarrassing. But Andrew Eister has a big grand slam for them. I mean, they had another game where I think they got the winning run on second. They were down 5-1, made it 5-4 in the ninth, and couldn't finish there. But the cardiac team of the weekend is your South Carolina Gamecocks.
Most definitely, and I don't think you're alone in overlooking that one. I'm going to say there's probably some people that showed up to work Monday
and went to the game and didn't know. I bet. Yeah.
Left that ballpark a little early. But yeah, that was, I don't think South Carolina could have really afforded to lose that series given the, not only the SEC schedule, but they've got Texas. So for them to to stay locked in and salvage that with 6 in the ninth was really impressive. I think I was watching that and Vandy. Those are both closing at about the same time. So one on the phone, one on the TV. And I saw where South Carolina hit a home run in the ninth to cut it to 7-3. And I think Greensboro made a pitching change and flip over. And then, it's 5 minutes later, they've got the bases loaded and Eister hits a grand slam. So that was pretty incredible. And they freshman of the week, Braswell.
Yeah,
he had a really good weekend.
Yeah,
home run Friday, 2 RBIs Saturday, game-winning RBI Sunday. Plus, he's a two-way guy. Gets a little action on the mound. 3 strikeouts in an inning in that Sunday game. So he had quite the weekend.
They also got a home run from Matt Hogan, who transferred from Vanderbilt. I don't know that I think he sat out the last game. Might have been a platoon thing. I don't know. But with Eister hitting 2, they had 5 on the weekend. Seems like, I'm not gonna come to conclusions about beating UNC Greensboro, but all they needed was just to hit a little bit a year ago, and that season goes a little differently. And I'm really curious to see if Eister and some of those guys have gotten a little better. Brayden Wimbers, another guy they've got coming back. I'm really interested to see if the bats can just be okay for them, because it feels like they'll have the pitching, although their third guy, their JUCO transfer, whose name escapes me, I think had a disappointing start. But you figure they're going to pitch in the rotation. Yeah, that's the one. And I think he was like 90 strikeouts to 10 walks a year ago, so struck out a lot of guys. They didn't walk a lot of guys, which is big in the league. But that's one that I'm really curious to see how they do going forward.
Yeah, like you mentioned, they had some pop last year. You've got Wes Clark putting up strong, home run numbers, but against kind of the top end of the league, they really struggled at the plate. So they need to be a little bit better there. I think they had 13 hits on Friday night, so scored 9 runs. Feel a little bit better about that. I think Will Sanders looked pretty good for them. He went 5 and gave up 1. Bosnick is going to be their number 2. He missed the weekend, didn't get a start there, so you feel a little bit better when you get him back too. I know in our preview we kind of hit on that was one of their advantages is the fact that you may have one of the better 1-2s in the league. So as those guys get a little bit healthier, get some more innings under them, I think that pitching will carry them a little bit more. And the offense doesn't have to be top 3 in the league for them to win, but it needs to be better than it was last year. So that will definitely be interesting to see, because I think they've got the guys to do it.
How'd you feel about Florida? Because I know Liberty is no cakewalk. The games were pretty close. They had some good freshman pitching. We've said all along Florida's going to be better at year's end, but you were sure hoping they wouldn't lose the series to Liberty, which is what happened.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people are going to see that and just kind of assume Florida didn't show up and they got beat by a bad team. I know a couple of publications have been ranking Liberty now. I think they are a good team. Barco was really, really good on Friday night. He went 6, had 11 strikeouts, no earned. Other than that was kind of the big bright spot for them. Saturday and Sunday,
and
they lose each of those.
Pitched pretty well in spots too, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they lose the next 2 by 2 runs, and it just seemed like they just didn't hit enough. I know in Sunday's loss, they lost 5-3, had 5 hits, and that's against Liberty's Sunday pitching. I don't know a ton about Liberty's Sunday pitching, but I would guess it's probably not as good as what you're going to see in the SEC. So it's definitely concerning, but it is early. Liberty is, a little bit better team than maybe meets the eye there. So I don't think it's caused a panic or anything like that, but definitely not a great start in Gainesville.
Another one that's hard to know what to make of is Alabama taking 3 from, as my 8-year-old son calls him, Xavier, which, by the way, a year ago took 2 or 3 from Texas A&M. And what
they
was
did
a
on
real
opening
omen
weekend.
for the season. We'll get to the Aggies in a minute, but Alabama, I felt like got some hitting out of its veteran guys. My question is what they've got pitching wise, which I don't know what to tell from that end. I mean, it didn't go badly for them for sure, but it felt like timely hits from their veterans was kind of their theme of the weekend.
Yeah, those first 2 games, they win both of them 5-4. Diodati gets the walk-off, but it did seem like they were kind of relying on some big hits from some guys. The transfer catcher, Dominic Tomez, I think he was JUCO guy who came from Arkansas. He hits 2 home runs. I know the Wake Forest transfer, Hunter Furtado, looked like he was pretty good. He went, I think, 3 innings in relief and gave up no runs, 1 hit. And then Sunday, they just, kind of get out to a big lead and cruise. Sounded like the Grayson hit guy was pretty good. He went 4 in his start, which, if you can get that out of a Sunday guy, I think you take that every time. But not a ton that you can kind of take out of this. They did what they're supposed to. They sweep Xavier. sorry, Xavier. And like you said, you mentioned the Musketeers went. I think it was opening day last year. Take 2 or 3 from Texas A&M. So, anytime you start 3-0, I don't think you complain about that.
Yeah, you mentioned Grayson Hitt. I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of those
Mm-hmm.
guys that they had who'd been highly regarded. I think he's still a pretty good pro prospect. Alabama's got to find more of those because, I mean, the pitching got decimated. I mean, the pre-lip injury, if he's pitching for them, that changes the complexion of their team. Might even make them a borderline regional team. But I feel like that one injury, I think, hurt Alabama as much as any injury hurt any team in the league. And you hope that it's a Hit or somebody like that who will step up and nobody's going to fill the void. That would be an overstatement, but
right,
do their best to make up.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting. Like you said, you're not really, you're not getting another Connor Prelip out there. But if you can have some guys step up and eat some innings and just, be serviceable weekend guys who can eat some innings, I think that would go a really long way for this team.
A&M didn't put the pedal down on Fordham, but it did win the series. Jim Schlossnagle has really rebuilt that roster. What did you take away from what went down in College Station this weekend?
Yeah, it looked like the pitching was really good. Detmer goes 6 innings on Friday with 7 Ks, no walks. The Texas Tech transfer, Micah Dallas, he goes 6 1/3, 1 earned. So, if those two guys can kind of anchor that rotation, I think they feel a little bit better because it does feel like there's a lot of new faces there, a lot of stuff to figure out. If you can get some consistency out of the rotation, I think that makes you feel a lot better because for the longest time, A&M kind of struggled offensively. But the pitching was there, and they were a competitive team because they could pitch it with anybody in the league. I don't know if they're going to be quite to that level, but if they can just be consistent on Friday and Saturday night in a year where there's not a lot of proven guys in the league, I think that could maybe help them exceed expectations compared to what some people thought coming into the season.
Have we hit everybody but Missouri?
I think that's the case. Georgia, Missouri,
Georgia was one I wanted to talk about for sure because
Mm-hmm.
Georgia struggled a little more with Albany than I hoped, but ended up winning them all. Had a walk-off on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I was scared of for Georgia is the offense just didn't they're not scoring 12, 13 runs like a lot of good offenses do in those kind of games. But that's not really ever been Georgia's style either, right? I mean, it's win those 3-2 type of games. But I'd hope to see a little bit more from the bats because I think they have some good ones. Maybe not great ones, but a lot of good ones and a lot of kids coming back. But pitching and kind of got them through the weekend, which, given the way Strickland seems plays, is not a total shock there.
Yeah, I don't think that's a surprise. Jonathan Cannon looked really good. They do have some depth in that bullpen. So, like you mentioned, they don't necessarily need to score 12 to win, but obviously that's something you'd like to see happen. Tell you who did have a good offensive day. The Tate brothers combined for 7 hits on Saturday. So yeah. I'm not sure how many Georgia had as a whole, but I think they kind of took most of them there.
I think both
that
of
was
them
a cool
got
little
bomb
nugget.
that day too, didn't they?
That might be right. That sounds right. But yeah, they hit really well. But I think Georgia, like you mentioned, the strength of that team is going to be their pitching staff. I think Cannon has a chance to be really good and one of those guys that's in that conversation for SEC Pitcher of the Year for them. So it was encouraging to see him with a strong start.
Yeah, the Tate brothers. Connor, we debated putting him on the first team All-SEC team. That's a big kid, got a really good bat, and he's the kind of guy that, again, if you're Georgia, you don't need a lot of help sometimes offensively. But he and Corey Collins are 2 bats, and Parks Harbor's another one that I think they really like. I don't think we talked about him much preseason, but they feel like that they've got some guys there that can give them some answers offensively this year.
Yeah, and you see the first 2 games of that series are a little tight, and then you get to some Sunday pitching, and they did do some damage there. Won that one pretty comfortably, 9-1. So they do have some guys, like you mentioned, some guys in that lineup that can do damage.
Missouri just went to Nichols State and obliterated them a couple of games. And then my concern for them is, well, there's a lot of concerns, but pitching depth is one. And they give up, I think they lose one 9-8 on Saturday, and we're tied up 4-4 late in the game today. Look, if you're Missouri, they had trouble beating anybody a year ago. I remember they had a disastrous start to the season that just carried over for them. It was good to see them win a couple games, but the way they're finishing down there is a little concerning and makes me wonder if they've got enough arms this year to really challenge a lot of people on the weekend. Although, if you can go 2 games, and my dog is really upset about this. You can hear him. But
Oreo?
Yeah, that's Oreo. That's my goodness. Any case, wow, that's loud.
Yeah, I think Missouri, like you mentioned, I don't know how many proven guys they've got. They did pull that game out today, ended up winning 7-4, so 3-1 on the weekend. I think I saw per Twitter this is their first 3-1 start since 2018. So, I mean, sometimes when you're Missouri, you take them when you can get them. That was a team that, like you mentioned, kind of struggled last year. So for them to come in and, you saw flashes of it last year, but for them to come out and start strong, I think that's pretty encouraging for them. Again, like Kentucky, they're one of those teams that will spend a lot of time on the road to start the year. So, when there's a lot of other teams that may have the luxury of padding some of those non-conference schedules up a little bit, Missouri's often on the road. I know, looking at their schedule right now, their first 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games are on the road, so they're not going to be at home until a couple of weeks into March. So 3-1 start is at Nichols is definitely something. If you're Mizzou, you're going to take.
Well, I'm looking through the players of the week. Cade Doty at LSU, the hitter of the week. You mentioned Braswell, the freshman of the week. I was starting to do a poll on Twitter Saturday morning after Friday night's games, and I was just going to ask people, who do you think had the best outing in the SEC? And I started going, well, Landon Sims has got to be there. Hunter Barco's got to be in there. Was it Burns who pitched for Tennessee Friday night? Or did he go Saturday? I'm getting mixed up now. But
he was Friday. Dolander was Saturday.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. And then Blake Money was there. And I'm like, wait a minute. I can't even – like I got 5 or 6 here that like and Twitter only gives you 4 choices.
Yeah.
So like I can't even distinguish between 5 guys here as to who had the best outing. Chris McElvain at Vandy only went 4, but was really good against a great Oklahoma State lineup. Point is that I had to split them into East and West because and you had 4 pretty good ones for the West too. And that's the thing that we talked about going in, right, William? We said we love the bats. I mean, your first team All-SEC team looks like an All-American team. Your second team All-SEC team looks like your first team a lot of years. And yet here we are where you just had so many guys on Friday night who went really deep into games and pitched well. And again, I know that it's not SEC on SEC, that kind of stuff, but so it's going to be different once you get into conference play. But just seeing guys do that on opening weekend to me was probably my biggest takeaway is, hey, you had some guys who could go and pitch pretty well. You had a lot of double-digit strikeout games or close to it. I was really, probably of all the things that I didn't see coming, that would be close to the top of my list is just the number of good pitching performances we saw with guys going deep into games.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I know anybody that listened to our SEC West and SEC East previews, it seems like every time we went to a team, we're like, well, they're going to hit, but we don't know about their pitching. And then, we get to weekend 1 and there's a lot of guys turning out really good nights. Like you mentioned, when you talk about who's the best, I think Barco won pitcher of the week. Sims is in that discussion. I think for me, I think Blake Money might have been the most surprising and kind of the biggest statement because he's a guy you've heard them talk about. He lost a lot of weight. He's in better shape. They're expecting good things from him. So you hear that year in, year out with a lot of guys, and some guys it translates, some it doesn't. So to see him come out and do that on top of what their offense did, I think that makes LSU a much more dangerous team if you give them a Friday night guy like we saw this weekend.
we had a hard time picking our relievers because the league's two best closers coming back were Sims and Maldonado, and they both got stuck in the rotation. We ended up kind of scrambling and throwing Redmond Walsh on the first team. I think there was a Kentucky reliever or two in there. One guy I might have regretted leaving off was Jaden Woods. I don't know that Woods was great this weekend, but did we get any clarity on the back end of bullpens this weekend? Because I don't feel like we got a lot.
Yeah, I don't think we saw a ton. You did mention Woods. That's a guy I like. I don't think he did great this weekend, but yeah, I think that's a guy that might take him a little bit to figure it out. But I think he's got a lot of potential. Preston Johnson at State, he did give up the one home run, but he comes in 4 innings, 9 strikeouts. In terms of State, I think a team that was just loaded last year in the bullpen. Other than Sims, he was probably the best guy to the pen last year for them. And it looks like, again, this year he's going to be, he's going to go into that number 1 guy to the pen. But, for the most part, yeah, it felt like there's still a lot up in the air there. And we thought Riley for Vanderbilt was going to be a rotation guy. I think he goes 4 on Friday, doesn't give up a run. So be interesting to see if he stays in the bullpen or what they do with him. But I thought he looked good. But yeah, still a lot of question marks in the bullpens.
Grade the weekend. And I want to just let you, for the league as a whole, how you felt it went. And I'm gonna let you answer that before I give you my feedback and my reasoning. In fact, you might even change my mind on some stuff. But I'm just curious. We haven't talked about this off podcasts. What's your gut level feeling on how good of a weekend or maybe not good it was for the league?
Yeah, I think on the one hand, you've got State and Vanderbilt who had a chance to kind of make those, big statement wins. They didn't, but I don't think anybody is writing off Mississippi State or Vanderbilt. I think this from weekend 1, it feels like this league might be a little bit more competitive. In the middle than we thought, because we thought it was going to be pretty top heavy, and it still will be to a degree. But Texas A&M pitches it, better than we were expecting. Auburn pitches better than we were expecting. You get money at LSU that pitches it really well. So, we think it's just going to be the top tier teams just knocking the ball around the ballpark, and then week 1 kind of surprises us. So, when you take a step back and you look at it on the surface, it doesn't look like the greatest weekend for the league. But I think there were a lot of flashes there that might be exciting for later in the year that will make things a little bit tighter than we were expecting.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a C or a C minus, and that's against expectations of what we thought they were. I think, to me, once State and Vandy both lost those series, you were sitting on no better than a B, because those meant a lot, right? Auburn got a little of it back doing what Auburn did against the Big 12. Tennessee I was real impressed with, but it's Georgia Southern, good team, but not a great team, maybe not an NCAA tournament level team. And then you had the league swept 7 series, won a couple more. Arkansas was another one that bothered me. You want to see Arkansas kind of put its foot down. Ole Miss did that, but Charleston Southern, LSU scored the runs, but that's what happens to pitching running on fumes. So to me, the mood was kind of set by State and Vandy. And unfortunately, again, you had some other things make it up. But, I mean, the bar for expectation in this league is so high. As well it should be. There's a lot of talent. But I'm not going to say I came out of the week in question, is the league great this year? I think it is. But I wanted to see more than I did. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe the league is becoming a victim of its own expectations. But I'd hoped for a little bit more than we got. And Florida losing was another one, right? It just seemed like those 3 teams losing series, you wanted to see somebody put their foot down, kind of like State did out in Texas a year ago, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, it definitely felt like, the marquee wins weren't there. I do think you hit on a good point, maybe a victim of their own success to a degree. Because, State, Ole Miss, and Arkansas go to Texas last year against the top 3 Big 12 teams, and I think they go 8-1. So it was, I think that a lot of people were probably guilty of this, but at State, at Vandy, I think you expected both of those teams to probably win those. So for both of them to lose, I think that's kind of definitely the big storyline of the weekend. Little disappointing, but I still think at the end of the year those teams are going to be right in the thick of it.
Teams that piqued your interest the most this weekend. Give me 2 or 3 for various reasons.
So I went Auburn to start. So I'll pick someone other than them. I think it's probably Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, that was a pretty loud statement. Their pitching staff comes out and looks really good. We'll be interested to see, if they keep that up or how that goes. I think there's a lot of buzz around that program. I think Vitello is, I feel like I rave about him every time his name comes up. I think that team might exceed expectations. I know people were thinking they might take a little bit of a step back. Obviously, after weekend one, it's still a little early, but we'll see. So I think Tennessee, Auburn, and then like we mentioned, State and Vandy had a chance to be there, but I thought A&M. I thought they pitched it pretty well. It'll be interesting to see if that was just because of Fordham or if that's something we can expect throughout the year. But that's kind of something that caught my eye that I'm kind of looking forward to in week 2.
Yeah, I would go Tennessee was my 1.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn was my 2, and Vandy was my 3 just because it didn't – I'm not shocked they lost the series, and I think it was 11-11. I mean, again, that could have gone either way. But
yeah,
I think I expected Vanderbilt to hit a little more and pitch a little less. And Vanderbilt had so many arms who threw really well. And again, you don't have Patrick Riley in the rotation. Christian Little's not there. Both pitched pretty decently in relief, although Little only got an inning. I think they've miscast Thomas Schultz at the back of the bullpen. I just don't think he's a fit there for them. In fact, I think Maldonado, I wouldn't be shocked if they end up moving him back to the pen. But I just thought seeing some guys, Hunter Owen another one, Grayson Moore another one. Vanderbilt had a lot of guys that are gifted arms, but you hear gifted arms a lot, and gifted arms sometimes go out and give you a 3-inning, 4-run performance. Their guys were going there and throwing zeros against a great hitting team. So to me, seeing Vandy with some unknown arms, with the 2 guys that you would have said a month ago, all right, Little and Riley are going to carry them, and they didn't. It was other guys. And then they didn't field the ball really well either, which is kind of a Vandy hallmark. The hitters that we like the most for their team didn't hit. Spencer Jones had a great weekend. He was a kid that was a primo prospect a couple years ago, and injuries have just derailed him for 2 years. So they're to me, having watched all that series, I was intrigued with them just because it didn't really look like the way that I thought it would have looked, and they left a lot there. They can get a lot better. So, yeah, to me, and Arkansas, another one, too. With Arkansas, I'm just like, okay, I think if they do that again, that series is going to go differently.
Right. And another team I feel like we're almost overlooking. I don't know if you can say I'm overlooking. We had them number 1 in our power ranking, but, Ole Miss just kind of quietly took care of business. No dramatic walk-offs, no tight games, just kind of controlled it from the start. 2 of them were run rules. I think that's something we might see a lot of with them, is just kind of cruising to victories because that team is loaded. So that's another one that will be interesting to watch as things unfold.
Yeah, I'm with you. You said it earlier. When I was doing my write-up last night, I just looked at Ole Miss and I'm like, I don't know what you can take away from it because they scored a lot of runs, but it wasn't the 51 that LSU got.
Mm-hmm.
The pitching was good, not great, maybe, but sometimes you're trying out guys in games you can win. I didn't feel like we learned a lot about Ole Miss, and that was the team that, like, after we did our stuff, I started thinking about it a little bit more. I kind of felt like Ole Miss might be the best team in this league, and really where I put them in the power rankings this week was more indicative of, okay, that's my opinion of them coming in. And the teams like Vandy and State that could have won series and moved up didn't. The teams like Arkansas, I mean, they go 2-1. You can't really move them down a whole lot. And everybody else was just, beating up good teams or further down in the pecking order to begin with. I'm with you. Ole Miss was just – I don't think I felt any differently about Ole Miss than I did coming into the weekend than I did leaving it.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a good point. Pitching-wise, there's, I think they pulled some guys early. They're rotating in a lot of guys because they had comfortable leads and there's not a lot of proven arms there, so they're getting guys chances. So not much you can take away from there, but they did what you're supposed to, and like I said, I have a feeling we're going to say that a lot about them through non-conference.
Anything else on the SEC that's worth touching on that we didn't get?
I think we pretty much covered everything. Good to be back, though. That was a fun weekend.
The graphics
Sunday
machine was in high gear.
Yeah, it was. I think I only had one typo on a graphic saying it was 2021 instead of 2022.
Hey,
so,
buddy, you whatever you did, you weren't going to have the mistake of the week, and that's all on me. Burying
Sunday,
South Carolina before it was dead, but
yeah, like I said, I don't think you're alone in that. But yeah, Sunday afternoon, sitting there with Vandy on TV, watching South Carolina on my phone. It was good to be back. So I'm excited, ready to do it all again.
Yeah. One final thought. I'm at that Vandy series. I'm in the press box, and they've got media. They've given us a pass for the concession stand. So I'm going down and getting my pretzel and my popcorn and all that stuff. And it's a couple minutes before the game, and I'm in the concourse, and they're playing the anthem. And, I'm sure it being 37 degrees and me being in the shade had a little to do with it. But I got chills as they're playing the anthem. And I swear to God, I mean, the cold didn't help, but I'm like, I'm just so excited we're playing baseball again. And a year ago, we're, media for Vandy, you're gonna be in the stands. They wouldn't let you in the press box, and you had the 2020 season that was canceled, and like back when the pandemic hit, we're like, you're not dipping all your well, I mean, people like us are, but the whole world's not dipping its toes into baseball all the way until basketball's over and until they're playing the conference series. So I feel like we've had 2 years now that have just been disjointed, and just being in the ballpark and going through the ballpark things and watching batting practice and your first glimpse of green when you come through the concourse, all those things and the sounds and the smells and the chatter and all this stuff that we just missed the last 2 years. I'm sitting there listening to Anthem just thinking, my God, I've missed all this so much.
Yeah, I had a similar moment. Auburn's playing in one of those tournaments in Texas where you have to buy the streaming pass and all of that. So I pulled their game up on my laptop and was just listening to the broadcast. And for so long, the only time you were getting pre-SEC Network days, you had to do that for a lot of games. So that was kind of taking me back to listen to the radio broadcast. You can hear the organ in the background.
Yeah.
And still a little cool outside, but we wish it was a little bit warmer. But that's when it kind of sunk in for me. Like, man, we're back. We made it. So that was definitely exciting.
All right, we got one walk of shame to hand out here. I just invented that term out of thin air. I'm going to see if you're with me on this. There's one thing that happened this weekend, or maybe didn't happen, that really irritated me. I don't know if we talked about this, but I just thought that's inexcusable, and I'll see if you can guess.
I don't know.
Okay,
where
I've hit you out of left field.
Yeah, I'm lost.
Okay, I'm in the press box, and they've got TVs on, and I'm just like, okay, we need to be watching somebody here, right? I mean, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's any game in the league. I just want to watch baseball, somebody else play. And they didn't have the streaming set up for the ESPN Plus, but it hit me. It's like, because they had the TV on the SEC Network, and no offense, but Paul Feinbaum is doing his show at 4 on Friday afternoon and talking spring football and whatever they talk. And I'm just like, come on, man. It's your opening baseball weekend. You got a huge series in Starkville. You got a huge series here. You got Auburn playing out in Texas. I'm like, how can you, on your network and in the agreement, how could you not have multiple games on TV, let alone one? That to me was a bad moment for the league, and I hope that this time next year, baseball is getting more popular. You know it, I know it. That was inexcusable for the league not to have at least one of their games on their own network. I just thought that was so silly.
Yeah, I did not know where you were going with that, but I'm in full agreement. There's plenty of hours to push the SEC network content. I think they do a great job on a lot of it.
Yeah.
But no content is going to beat live sports. that's why we're all here. So put the live sports on. One thing I will notice, or have noticed, when they release the schedule of the TV schedule, they might have done this in the years past, but this is the first year I've noticed it. The last series of the year, they're leaving the dates open so they can flex in whoever they want. So I really like that. So because that last game of that last series of the year, it's the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but you don't know what the most important games of that weekend are going to be. So I like the fact that they left that open to kind of make that judgment call. So I think that's something that we've seen trending in the right direction. I hope, like you mentioned, that we'll see that trend in the right direction in terms of opening day and things of that nature. We did see, I don't know how many different teams it was set opening day attendance records, opening weekend records. So you see season ticket sales that are higher than they've ever been. Mm-hmm. It's reflecting it in the ballpark. So I think the more games you put on TV for the average fan who maybe isn't fully plugged in to see some of those scenes, then all of a sudden they're going to pay attention to baseball a little bit more. They're going to go to those numbers are going to continue to increase. So I'm right there with you. I think that's got to be on TV, actual TV, not just the streaming networks at some point in the future.
Yeah, and I think they have, right? I think that so much of the SEC network has really helped the product, and my dog is just really torn up about something that's in my office because he's been sitting outside my door howling and growling for 20 minutes now, so I do apologize. But I just feel like that's done so much to help things. Like, you probably had this happen too. Like, you're at a game at a regional or super regional or a College World Series, and you're getting texts from friends that you don't even know watch college baseball and are glued to it. I feel like the TV exposure has helped that. I feel like I was on MLB Network this morning. They were even showing, some highlights of games this weekend. Now, I think the Major League game could do a better job. I think they moved in a better direction with the draft when they were going to have it in Omaha. Then it just killed me that all fell apart and, went back to kind of the way it was. But I feel like slowly we're making progress, and the league knows it better than anybody. And I could not believe that they didn't capitalize on that. I don't have an explanation for it.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I think they've done a ton of great things. Because like we mentioned, pre-SEC Network days, you were on the radio every game, but 4, 5, 6 out of the year. Mm-hmm. So they've obviously done great. I love the streaming options where you can basically get every home game to a degree. But I think that's the next step. They've got great on-air talent too.
Yeah, they do. Now, that's another thing.
The
Their
I think those guys are awesome.
Yeah, Burke and McDonald and all those guys have done such a good job. And I feel like we just sat there and I criticized them. I feel like they get it in postseason, right? Their postseason coverage is outstanding. The coverage in Hoover is outstanding. You're coming off a year where you had 2 teams that were the last one standing. And, I feel like they do a good job. And I think that just is what kind of added to my surprise is I think the league has done so well. I didn't expect them to blow it on opening day like that. I felt like I've used up a considerable amount of air here, but it you can tell it really bothered me.
I think there's a lot of people on social media that agree with you, judging by my mentions on the weekend, because I did get a handful of those. And like we said, I hope that's something that in the future they'll see the value in that, and we won't have to complain about that next year.
Yeah. Any other gripes, comments, observations, anything we missed that we didn't get to today?
I think that pretty much covers it. So, like I said, I think another big takeaway other than on the field was the attendance, the people on social media with the MLB kind of being locked out. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of chatter about the college game. So I think this is a really important time for college baseball. I think the product has just been phenomenal. So I think it's awesome to showcase everything, and really excited for the next handful of weeks to keep it going.
William, it's been fun. Hopefully we'll get a chance to do another show this week to preview the weekend. But, man, can't wait to do these all year. Can't wait till conference play starts and we get to see the powerhouses play each other. But until then, even some mismatches were good enough to keep my interest and just have me loving having the game back this weekend.
Yeah, most definitely, and enjoyed being on and talking a little baseball.
All right, he's William Drummond at the SEC Baseball Twitter account, not affiliated with the SEC, does a great job. William and I are partnering together this year for content at the 14. I'm Chris Lee. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe so you get notifications of when we're going on. A ton of basketball content up. We're doing the 2-for-1 right now, where I'm getting stressed out thinking, how am I going to cover two sports at once to the level I want? And frankly, that accounted for maybe a few gaps in my knowledge over the weekend that I ordinarily probably would have nailed, just having to follow a bunch at once. But in any case, can't wait for the rest of the season. Can't wait to do more of these. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will catch you again later in the week.